The train door closed behind me, and I sat down with a tired sigh. My name is Lena, and in October 2017, I was leaving Lisbon after working there for 2 months. I didn't plan to stay long in any place. That was my life. I moved from country to country, city to city, always chasing something new. I liked the feeling of not knowing what would happen next. It gave me freedom, but sometimes it also made me feel completely alone. That autumn, I had no real plans. I only knew I wanted to go east. Maybe Greece, maybe Turkey, somewhere warmer. Lisbon was already cold at night, and I was tired of folding my coat tighter around me. I took a train to Madrid first, and then another one to Barcelona. From there, I found a slow train heading all the way across Europe, through Italy, Croatia, and then into the Balkans. It would end in Thessaloniki, a city I didn't know anything about. That made it perfect. I met a lot of people on that journey. On trains, you always do. Some are kind. Some are strange. Some stay in your memory for only a moment. But 2 people from that trip, I will never forget them. Their names were Elisa and Marla. At least, those were the names they gave me. I first saw them in Rome. I was sitting in the train corridor with my backpack on the floor beside me, eating bread and a piece of fruit. They walked past me, talking in English and laughing. They looked confident and relaxed, like they belonged anywhere. One of them had a red jacket and long dark hair. The other wore a green scarf and had blonde curls. They were probably a few years older than me, maybe 30. I was 25 at the time. When I saw them again the next day, they smiled. I smiled back. By the time we reached Zagreb, we were already sitting together in the same carriage. Elisa asked where I was going. I told her, "East. Somewhere warm. I'm tired of cold mornings." They laughed. Marla said they were heading to a small town outside Thessaloniki for a short stay. "But we'll be back in the city by Saturday," she added. "We'll go dancing. You should join us." They asked me about my travels. I told them some real stories and made up a few details. I said I had worked in cafes and hostels. I told them I wanted to write one day, but for now, I was collecting life. They liked that answer. They called me brave and free. It felt good to hear those words, even though I wasn't always sure they were true. That night, the train was quiet. Elisa said she wanted to sleep early. Marla turned to me and said, "Come on, let's go to the dining car. You must be hungry." I shook my head. "I don't have money for train food. I'll wait till we stop." But she insisted. "It's on us. You can pay next time." I didn't argue. I was hungry, and they seemed kind. The dining car was warm. The soup was salty, but it felt like comfort. Marla told me stories about cities she had visited. She said she once danced on the roof of a building in Buenos Aires. I listened. It all sounded magical. When we returned to the carriage, Elisa was asleep. Her legs were on the seat and her jacket was rolled up as a pillow. I placed my small bag back in the corner. Everything seemed normal. Nothing felt strange. Not yet. We crossed the border into North Macedonia around midnight. There was a short stop, and then the train moved again. I watched the dark countryside outside the window, wondering what it would feel like to wake up in a new country the next morning. In the early morning, the train stopped again. I sat up and stretched. Then I saw them, 2 uniformed police officers walking through the carriages. One was tall and had serious eyes. The other was shorter with a thick mustache. They entered our carriage and looked at each person's bag. When they reached me, the tall officer asked in English, "Your name?" I gave it to him and handed over my passport. He checked it carefully. "Please come with us," he said. "Bring your bag." "What's wrong?" I asked. But he didn't answer. My heart started to beat faster as I followed them out of the train and into the cold air. We walked across the platform to a small gray building. Inside, a woman officer checked my passport again. Then she asked me to open my bag. I did. I wasn't worried. I had nothing to hide. But when I opened the bag, my stomach dropped. There, under my clothes, were thick envelopes filled with cash. American dollars. A lot of them. The tall officer's face changed. He looked both surprised and pleased. "What is this?" he asked. "It's not mine," I said quickly. "I didn't put it there." "Then who did?" the short officer asked. He was no longer polite. I couldn't speak. My head was spinning. I thought about Elisa. I thought about Marla. I thought about the moment I left my bag on the seat while I ate soup with a stranger. But it was too late. "This is a serious crime," the woman officer said. "You must stay here for questioning." I looked through the window at the train outside. It started to move. Slowly, then faster. It was leaving without me. I stood there, frozen, watching it disappear down the track. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out of my mouth. My hands were shaking. I tried to explain again. "I don't know how the money got there. Maybe someone used my bag. I wasn't with it the whole time." The tall officer looked at me but said nothing. He seemed more curious than angry. The short one looked annoyed. He spoke quietly in another language to the woman officer. She nodded and picked up the envelopes of money. 200,000, she said softly. My knees felt weak. That was more money than I had ever seen. I worked for weeks just to afford one train ticket. How could I explain this? "Your name is on the passport. This is your bag. The money was inside," the tall officer said. "So now we ask you questions." I sat down in a hard wooden chair. I couldn't stop thinking about Marla's green scarf. I remembered how she smiled as we ate. I remembered her saying, "You can pay next time." Next time? There was no next time. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. I sat in that cold room for more than an hour. No one explained what was happening. No one asked me anything. They just kept looking at the money and talking in low voices. Every now and then, someone pointed at me. I felt like I wasn't even real anymore, like I had become a problem, not a person. Finally, a man in a gray jacket entered. He was not in a police uniform, but everyone looked at him with respect. He came over to me and sat in the chair across from mine. He spoke clearly but slowly, like he wanted me to understand every word. "My name is Mr. Petros. I work with International Travel Security. We have a situation. You must explain what happened to this bag." "I already said," I began. My voice sounded too soft, too weak. "I didn't know about the money. That is my bag, but I didn't put anything in it. Someone else must have." "Who?" he asked. His voice was calm, but it held pressure. I took a breath. I didn't want to believe what I was about to say, but I had to say it. There were 2 women. I met them on the train. Their names were Elisa and Marla. We talked. We had dinner in the dining car. I left my bag in the carriage while I ate. They stayed behind. They could have put something in my bag. I don't know. Mr. Petros leaned forward slightly. "These women, can you describe them?" I did my best. I talked about Marla's green scarf and blonde hair, Elisa's red jacket and her serious brown eyes. I told him their voices, their laughter, even the way they walked. I told him about the small town they said they were stopping at before reaching Thessaloniki. He listened carefully, then stood up. "Wait here," he said, as if I could go anywhere. I sat alone again. My fingers were cold. My lips felt dry. I wished I could call someone, but I had no one to call. I had no family nearby. I didn't even have many friends. My life was always moving. I never stayed long enough in one place to build anything real. Time passed. I wasn't sure how long. It could have been 10 minutes or an hour. My mind was full of fear and questions. Would they believe me? Would they let me go? What if the women used fake names? What if they had done this to someone else before? When Mr. Petros returned, he had a folder in his hands. He placed it on the table and opened it slowly. "We checked the town they told you about," he said. "There is no record of anyone with those names staying there. No hotel bookings. No local sightings." My stomach turned. I felt like I had swallowed a stone. "But," he added, "we did find something interesting. There was a case like this 5 months ago. A young man. Different country, different train, but same method. He met 2 friendly women on a long trip. One night, they offered him dinner. He left his bag for a short time. When he reached the border, the police found a large amount of cash inside. I sat up straighter. "So, it happened before?" He nodded. "Yes, and we believe they are part of a group. Maybe more people are involved. But we still need to follow the law. You brought this money into the country. Whether you knew about it or not, the law says we must hold you for now." I felt tears behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said quietly. "I believe you," he said. "But belief is not always enough." They moved me to another room. It was small and had no windows. There was a metal bed and a wooden chair. I stayed there for the rest of the day. They brought me some food, rice and vegetables, and a bottle of water. I didn't eat much. I was too nervous. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything. About the smiles of those women. About how easily I had trusted them. About how I always told myself I was careful, but maybe I wasn't careful enough. I thought about calling the embassy, but my phone had no signal here. I asked the guard, but he only shrugged and said, "Tomorrow." In the morning, they took me to another place. This building was even larger. It looked like a government office. I was led into a long room where two men sat behind a desk. "We will start an investigation," one of them said. "Until then, you must stay in the city." "Stay where?" I asked. He handed me a paper. "This is a temporary address. A hotel. You cannot leave the city, and you must come here every 2 days to sign this form." So I wasn't under arrest, but I wasn't free either. They gave me back my passport and bag, but the money was gone, taken as evidence. I walked out of the building into the bright morning light. My legs felt weak. I didn't know where I was. I followed the map on the paper and walked to the hotel. It was small but clean. The woman at the front desk gave me a key and didn't ask any questions. I sat on the bed for a long time. My eyes looked at the wall, but my thoughts were far away. How could I have been so stupid? How could I not see what they were doing? But even as I thought those things, I knew the truth. They were clever. They were kind, soft-spoken, friendly. They had done this before. And now, I was part of it. That evening, I wrote in my notebook. I didn't know why. Maybe to keep myself calm. Maybe to feel less alone. I am here in a strange city. I cannot leave. I am being watched. I have no idea when this will end, but I will not give up. I will clear my name. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking. The next day, I went back to the office to sign the paper. On the way there, I passed a newsstand. A newspaper showed a headline in bold black letters, written in the local language. I didn't understand it all, but I saw one word I did know: smuggling. I wondered if it was about me. Inside the office, Mr. Petros met me again. He told me they were checking cameras from the train stations. He said they were searching for the women, but so far no results. I asked him, what happens if they never find them? He looked at me with tired eyes. Then this will take longer. That night, I cried. I had been strong for days, but I couldn't stop the sadness anymore. Not just because of the fear, but because I felt so far from everything I once trusted. And deep inside me, I started to understand something. Trusting the wrong people wasn't my only mistake. The real mistake was thinking I could run forever and never face danger. Now, I was standing still, and the truth was finally catching up with me. The days passed slowly. Every morning, I woke up in the small hotel room, unsure of what would happen next. I had no job, no income, and no one to talk to. My money was almost gone. I started skipping meals. I only ate once a day, usually bread or fruit from a cheap shop down the street. Twice a week, I walked to the government office and signed my name on a form. They never asked me anything new. They never gave me news. I felt forgotten, like I was stuck in a story that wasn't mine, but no one wanted to end it. I didn't leave the city. I wasn't allowed to. But I began walking more, just to feel the sun on my skin and remind myself that I was still free in small ways. The city was busy and noisy, but I moved through it like a ghost. No one saw me. No one cared. Then one morning, everything changed. I was sitting in the hotel lobby reading the same old newspaper I couldn't understand when the front desk phone rang. The woman looked up and said, "Lena, someone is here to see you." I stood up quickly, confused. "Who?" She pointed to the glass door. It was Mr. Petros. He didn't smile. That worried me. "We need to talk," he said. I followed him outside, down the street, and into a parked car. Another officer was driving. No one spoke for the first few minutes. My heart was beating so loudly I thought they could hear it. Finally, Mr. Petros turned to me. "We found them." For a moment, I didn't understand. "Elisa and Marla," he said. "They used fake names. They are part of a group that travels across Europe doing the same thing. We followed bank records and train station cameras. It took time, but we are sure now. They used you, Lena." I looked out the window. The street outside looked the same, but everything inside me was changing. "Are they here?" I asked. "No," he said. "They crossed into another country 3 days ago. But we have proof now. That means we can close your case." I turned to face him. "Does that mean I can go?" "Yes," he said. "Your name is cleared. You can leave the city, leave the country. You are free to travel again." I should have smiled. I should have felt happy. But all I felt was tired. He gave me a paper to sign, a formal letter saying I was no longer a suspect. He also gave me a number for a legal support office. He said they might help me find some compensation, but he warned me not to expect much. When I got back to the hotel, I packed my things slowly. My backpack felt heavier now, even though it carried less than before. I stood in front of the mirror. My face looked older. My eyes had changed. They no longer searched for new places. They searched for something else. Maybe peace. Maybe answers. I checked out of the hotel and walked to the train station. I didn't have enough money to go far. Just a few euros. I used them to buy a cheap seat on the next train heading west. The train was almost empty. I sat by the window and watched the city disappear behind me. I thought I would feel joy, but I didn't. Instead, I felt something else. A quiet sadness, not for what I lost, but for how easily I was fooled. I kept thinking about their faces, Elisa's quiet eyes, Marla's easy laugh. I wondered if they even remembered me, if they had done this so many times that I had already become just another story to them. But I would remember. I would always remember. The train stopped in a small town near the border. I stepped outside and walked into a cafe. I ordered tea and sat by the window. A man at the next table smiled and asked where I was from. I smiled back, but I didn't answer. Not because I was rude, but because I didn't want to start another story I wasn't ready for. I stayed in that small town for a few days. I found a hostel that let me clean the kitchen in exchange for a bed. It wasn't much, but it gave me time to breathe. Every evening, I walked down to the water. There was a quiet river behind the town. I sat on the rocks and listened to the sound of the wind in the trees. One night, I brought my notebook with me. I hadn't written anything since the first day I was questioned. Now, I opened it again. I wrote slowly. They used my name. They used my trust. But they didn't take my spirit. I will travel again. I will smile again. But next time, I will not give my trust so quickly. Some lessons are painful. Some lessons are heavy. But they teach us who we are. I closed the notebook and looked at the sky. It was full of stars. Clear, bright, honest stars. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if I would stay in that town or move on. But I knew something important. I was still here, still standing, still learning. And that was enough. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.